Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It's Friday. Yay! Yay for a War Friday. It is Friday, October 24th, 2025. And I don't know, nothing particularly special about the date now that I'm thinking about it. But all right, we move forward. There's news. As you know, we're at tariff war with Canada again. I mean, that's kind of always the case. Lately, we're at tariff war with everybody. It could change in a moment. It could go to zero later if they send them a bottle of maple syrup. I don't know. It doesn't really, who knows what it is with this guy. But we're back at war with tariffs with Canada because, interestingly enough, I mean, at bottom, they quoted Ronald Reagan about tariffs, saying, generally speaking, they're bad, which, generally speaking, they are. And that got him mad. And so, therefore, something. And now, I guess the actual status between us and Canada is exactly the same as it was yesterday. It's just that now we're no longer talking to them about it. So, I don't know. There have been trade negotiations, I guess, going on. And I'd have to ask the Canadians whether they thought there was any progress in those talks. And if there was, then they might feel bad about them being broken off. But Trump has broken them off. It's, I guess the least of our worries considering all the other things that are going on. But it is news. And, other things are happening in the world. Might as well talk about what's happening with us in Canada. They're our big old neighbor and everything. And CNN had an article available about it right away, so we could jump right into that. The continuing destruction of the White House goes on. HuffPost, I think, put together a list, and now everybody's running with their own list of the corporations and individuals and family fund donors to they thought they were donors to the White House ballroom. And so they'll fight tooth and nail with whatever PR ability they have to insist that, all we were doing was we were told we were going to be a part of building American history. But of course, what has actually happened is that they have paid for the demolition of the East Wing. They will disclaim that by saying we were told that it was going to be left alone. We were told but you were told that you were getting into a deal with Donald Trump. And you're supposed to be sophisticated business people. That's how you came by so much money. You were so much smarter than everyone else. That's why you have that much money, according to your gospel. And you couldn't understand the lie down with dogs, get up with fleas concept. It's pretty old. Been around a while. Fleas, dogs, both, and the expression. You had to have known either what you were getting into or that you had no control over what you were getting into and you went ahead and did it anyway. So the demolition of the East Wing, as far as I'm concerned, is on you, and we should let everybody know who you are. And I guess we could start there. We'll do the Canada story. We'll catch up with everything we can and then dive into Instapaper. And Greg Dworkin not here this morning. It's a Friday. He's not taking a day off or anything. It's a regularly scheduled break. But just thought, I'd make sure that you knew that. Not to anticipate. I mean, could happen. He can always call in, and he can do it silently these days. It's a stealth strike he's able to pick up on us or perpetrate if necessary. All right. So CNN now also has its own list of contributors going on. But I'll go back to the first one that I saw yesterday. Although, did I even bother pocketing it? I was posting it on Blue Sky, and sometimes those things, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like if I've covered it on social media, I don't then go back and do it on the radio show, although that doesn't make any sense because the audiences are very often quite different. But let me go back and find the HuffPost one because I don't know. I feel like they did it first, or maybe they didn't, and I noticed theirs first, and that's good enough for me. All right. So if I scroll far enough, I'm sure I can get it. And it's not a surprising list, although there are a few, I guess, shockers on the list, just in terms of like, well, didn't you think that doesn't make any sense for you? The big tech companies, they're all in anyway, and they'd been brought in and suckered, and I'm sure harangued about this personally by the president. But like, I guess I was curious about, for instance, the Hard Rock Cafe. Like, how does that fit into your corporate image? I'm not really sure. Anyway, what I saw yesterday was Jennifer Bendry and SV Date teaming up for a piece in HuffPost. All the donors financing Trump's ballroom as he demolishes the White House. And yeah, I just want to emphasize that we should be talking about this in terms of these are the people who paid for the demolition of the East Wing. There may or may not be a ballroom ever built there, for all we know. And, he may abscond with the money. Who knows where those dollars are? Or he just may get bored and leave and never come back. I don't know. No one knows what's going to happen. If it hasn't happened already, you don't know whether it's going to happen or not with Donald Trump. But even so, the demolition is part of this project. You paid for the project. You thought that wasn't going to happen, but you were very dumb if you believe Donald Trump. So here's the deal. And I think I encourage you to not only to do it yourself, but to encourage others to think of it this way. Just as we're trying mightily to convince, and I mean, it hasn't happened yet because these things take a little bit of time, so it may yet happen. But I've seen a lot of people saying every Democrat running for office should have have video of the demolition in an ad and say, this is what voting for Republicans means. This is what you get when you vote for these Republicans, or really at this point any Republicans, because it's mainstream Republicanism now, Trumpism. So, you ought to do that. And everybody's been screaming that the Dems have been non-responsive on it, but I mean, it does take a couple of days to get something like that up on the air. You could do it on the cheap on the internet these days. That's true. But anyway, the professionally produced television quality version of these things may be in the works. And if it's not, it's, probably is, as many people are saying, political malpractice if you don't do it. But in the meantime, you and I can talk about it. Here are, according to Jennifer Bendry and SV Date, those donors. By the way, the subheader here, Trump may have destroyed American history by raising the East Wing. He did. But at least these corporations and rich people get to buy access to the president. I know, very tongue-in-cheek. But again, don't let it be that Trump demolished the East Wing and that these donors are blameless. He wouldn't have demolished the East Wing had he not raised the money to do this stupid project. Because he said he was going to pay for it himself, but that was always a lie. By the way, just as we mentioned yesterday, when he now claims that he was always pitching Obama and even Biden while he was out. That seems unlikely. It's almost certainly a lie. But he says he was pitching Obama on building a ballroom, which, of course, everyone would reject. Who wants a ballroom? It's been 100 years since anybody needed a ballroom for anything. But anyway, he says he was pitching it to him, and that at the time he was pitching it, he estimated the cost of being about $100 million. Now, costs have gone up largely because Trump became president, exploded the economy, and then blew up the pandemic. And prices never came down again. And now he's in there making it worse with tariffs. But then he gets to be president again because reasons, despite the 14th Amendment, whatever, being a criminal, etc. And pitches the plans again. Now it's twice the price, $200 million. But don't worry, I'll raise all the money privately. By the way, it's going to cost about $250 million. Did you raise the $250 million? He claims he did, but now needs $300 million. It went to $300 million yesterday, late morning. By the afternoon, by the way, the second time they'd asked him about it during the day, it had gone to $350 million. You know how Trump is with number figures, right? So it may reach literally may reach $500,000 by the end of the weekend. Trump is on his way to Malaysia this weekend, which is fantastic because it's on the other side of the planet, and they should keep him, and the International Criminal Court of Justice should grab him while he's there, but I don't know. We pay for his security, so probably not. Anyway, although maybe he's being protected by ICE guys, and they'll be struggling with their 14th push-up and won't be able to do anything. Anyway, it's great that he's going. It also, though, means a very long plane ride back and forth. I don't know when he's coming back. Maybe never. But that means a lot of babbling to the press. And that means a lot of opportunities to just casually change the numbers and make it a $400 million project. And it's a long plane ride. He's leaving tonight, 10 o'clock or so Friday. And according to his schedule, it's a Friday departure, Sunday arrival. There is no Saturday this week for Donald Trump or whatever. He walks around on an airplane for a day. That's the news on that front. So where were we with this? Yeah, right. HuffPost was going to tell us the story. The White House on Thursday released a list of all the private donors. Allegedly. Wink, wink. Do we know it's all the private donors? No, we don't. Do they say it's all the private donors? I guess they do. Should we believe that it's all the private donors? Really, no. But here they are, those who have agreed to pay for the construction of President Donald Trump's 90,000 square foot, $300 million ballroom and the entire demolition of the East Wing, which is now complete. And that should get top billing. These are the private donors who, whether or not they agreed, paid for the demolition of the East Wing. Donors on the list include CEOs, real estate moguls, lots of corporations, and otherwise just really rich people. Defense contractors like Lockheed Martin and Booz Allen Hamilton are kicking in money for the president's project, as are telecommunications companies like Comcast and tobacco industry companies like Reynolds American. Tech companies like Amazon and Apple are in the mix, along with crypto companies. So not all of these companies will be ashamed of this. Many of them will. Many of them will just say that's just our lobbying money. I mean, you know what we were going to give money to Republicans, and whether we give it to them to run for office with or bribe the president with it doesn't make any difference. Because, what's the point of lobbying Congress right now if you can actually just throw a sack of cash at Trump? You'll get what you want because Trump will make Republicans in Congress do that thing or ignore them if they don't do that thing. And he'll sign an executive order saying that he did it. It will be blocked in court, but then he'll demand more tribute. I signed the thing. Give me another $500 million. So, getting the things done doesn't really matter. And I think the lobbyists actually know that. They just want to stay out of the way of, his temper. So, who's on the list? Let's see. There is Altria Group Incorporated is the number one listed. Now, Altria, is that also the tobacco guys? That's a renamed tobacco company, isn't it? Let's see. Yeah. Well, the world's largest producers and marketers of tobacco, cigarettes, and medical products, in case you were wondering, in the treatment of illnesses caused by tobacco. I guess that's what's supposed to make them, I don't know what, more palatable. They are owners of a million things, by the way. Including, Philip Morris is the one you would know as the tobacco operation. Let's see, subsidiaries include, let's see, want to look at more? I don't know. And who knows whether I'm getting an AI answer or not. Any other things that we would recognize off the top of my head? No. I mean, there's a lot of other things, and maybe you guys would recognize them, but I don't. Now, this is interesting. Subsidiaries... Founders. I guess this is a big conglomerate, and so the companies that came together to form Altria include Kraft Foods. You've definitely heard of them. Philip Morris USA, Nabisco, and Kraft Foods Incorporated. Is that somehow different? I don't know. Do they lead to different places in Wikipedia even? I don't know. Kraft food. So throw out your mac and cheese, I guess. Throw out all your cigarettes, or smoke your mac and cheese and eat your cigarettes. Either way. And Nabisco. And didn't Trump at some point say, I'm never eating Oreos anymore at some point? And I don't remember exactly why it was. But who cares? His boycotts come and go. You can consider whether you're going to boycott any of these companies. You're not going to be able to, mostly, and listen to the show because this is a computer-based show. So, Altria Group, Amazon, right up there. By the way, of course, I'll be reading stories from the Washington Post, owned by the same guy. He'll say, well, one company doesn't have anything to do with the other, but it'll be interesting. So if you or anyone else, me, are reading stories about the tragedy of the destruction of the East Wing in the Washington Post, you should note the Washington Post actually paid for the demolition. Now, people will say, no, Amazon did. But of course, in these guys' worlds, it's same thing, right? He owns these companies. It's self-dealing at the least. And I don't know, it came out of the coffers of Amazon. Yes, that's the accountants will say it's not true, that it's the same thing. But who cares? We're post-truth now at this point. Right? You know who's making the decision, right? I mean, Amazon doesn't do it and then say, oh, by the way, Jeff, we did this thing. What? Why didn't you tell me ahead of time? He knows. Who else is paying for the destruction of the East Wing? Accomplishing what the 9/11 hijackers could not, by the way, right? Flight 93 was brought down in Pennsylvania by people who did not would sacrifice their lives rather than see the plane used to destroy the White House. Donald Trump, on the other hand, we have no control over. I suppose it's possible that 50 passengers on a passing city bus could jump off and wrestle Donald Trump to the ground and, dump him in the ocean or something like that. But there's not much opportunity. But I'm just saying, right, they were supposed to knock out the White House. That plane it is alleged, was bound for the White House or possibly the Capitol, whichever one it could see best from the air and ram itself into. It didn't happen, but now it has. Anyway, who else? Apple. So what's the show running on right now? Apple. And they paid for the demolition of the White House. Booz Allen Hamilton, defense contractors. They're not going to be super embarrassed. They sort of probably considered the donation mandatory, given how much federal contracting they have in the defense area that won't be disrupted by shutdowns, cutbacks, dodgying, etc. I mean, there's plenty of Amazon and Apple contracts too, but and they're just hoping to preserve those. Booz Allen Hamilton, those contracts will be preserved. It's just a question of whether they will get them or not. Caterpillar Incorporated, and you remember that Donald Trump did lots of campaign trail events having to do with Caterpillar. Visited their plant, talked them up the whole time. By the way, I don't know. It is known, and I don't remember the name of the company offhand. A lot of people are passing that name around too. The company that won the contract for the demolition, as well as the company that bought, they got maybe they bought it, the contract for the construction later on. I haven't been following that as closely, but that is out there and easily discoverable. But whatever the company was that's doing the demolition, I note for the record and for the people at Caterpillar that for all the photographs that have been released, I have not seen one piece of Caterpillar equipment at this demolition or construction site. And I think they should be complaining about that. Why isn't our name, our corporate logo all over this demolition? Just like they wanted it to be, right? No, they didn't? Oh, that's interesting. Coinbase was the next one on the list. And I got to figure that's crypto, and they may not care. They may be happy about being part of the demolition, move fast, break things, those kind of things. They're probably pretty Trumpy and probably don't care too much. Comcast Corporation, they probably wish that hadn't happened. And I noticed a lot of these corporations they don't have any presence on Blue Sky. Almost certainly by now have Twitter presence, but I wasn't going to go there to dig them up and let people who are still willing to wade into that cesspool take their complaints there. But Comcast Corporation does a lot of online advertising, big part of the online advertising market there. The people who buy ads with Comcast should know that Comcast paid to destroy the East Wing of the White House. Then I guess the first entrance into the personal accounts, Pepe and Amelia Fanjul, Fanjul, and if I remember correctly, are they the Domino Sugar people of the Fanjul family, or do I have that one wrong? I'm pretty sure they're a Cuban-American family. Pardon me. Yeah. Okay. Florida Crystals Corporation and American Sugar Refining. I don't know whether that part of it is Domino Sugar or not, but big sugar family. Yeah, Domino is in there. Fanjul families comprises the subsidiaries Domino Sugar, Florida Crystals, C&H Sugar, Red Path Sugar, couple of others. in there as well. So if you're looking to cut sugar out of your life, you got that opportunity too. All right. They gave money. Hard Rock International, big question mark as to what they thought they were doing. Maybe is a MAGA guy run the place? I don't know. Of course, Google, no avoiding them. If you want to email me about trying to join in a boycott, you're going to have to use a Google product to do it. Basically, if you get up in the morning, you're going to use a Google product. HP Incorporated, if you're an old like me and you have, I found out recently that only old people like me have printers at home. Like there's entire generations that are like, yeah, we don't buy printers. Buying a printer at, Best Buy, one will probably leave you with an HP. I think at the moment I have an Epson in here mostly because I've thrown out so many HP printers over the years. But, this home printers are garbage anyway. But anyhow, if you're an old and you got an HP or you have an HP PC, which is entirely possible, sorry, your money is going to the demolition of the East Wing. Lockheed Martin, if you've bought fighter bombers lately, or you're a big patron of, major, who knows what. I don't know what else they make. Missiles. Yeah, I bought some hypersonic missiles the other day. Now I'm pissed. Anyway, Lockheed Martin, they too probably see it as a necessary part of their business model. Meta Platforms, the nerd guy with the glasses who had the hot girls site and then became a billionaire, he decided to give money over for that one and destroy the East Wing. Micron Technology, I don't know who the hell that is, but I probably have one of their products around too. Microsoft, can't escape them either. But there you go. They also are demolishing the East Wing. Next Era Energy Incorporated, whose products I bet will not be incorporated into the new construction. Also, Palantir Technologies, that makes sense. There's no embarrassing those guys. Of course, Ripple. I don't know what that is even. And it's like a Jerry Garcia song. But other than that, do they make I don't know who the hell they are. Ripple Labs, financial services company. That could be them. I really don't. So crypto, I guess. No embarrassing the crypto community. Reynolds American, which I first thought was like, that's it for my tinfoil holdings, but it's actually the tobacco Reynolds American, not Reynolds Aluminum. Who knows? Maybe that's a conglomerate too. I don't know. Anyway, T-Mobile. So hip and cool with all the pink in their logo and cool spokespeople telling you how awesome it is to have a T-Mobile phone, et cetera, et cetera. I bet they didn't know that they were paying for the East Wing demolition. That's a company I think that could be embarrassed about that. Tether America, makers of the popular camp game Tetherball. Not really. They're actually, what kind of tethering are they doing? They're tethering your livelihood to their crypto speculation. They're probably not going to be embarrassed. Union Pacific Railroad kind of has always been terrible oligarchical people, but okay, there you go. Absolutely necessary that there be a train connection somehow to all this. I guess really the railroads come from the era of the ballroom, so maybe that's why they wanted to have a part of it. Then the zombie invasion, the Adelson Family Foundation. There is one Adelson Family Foundation founding member still alive and running around. Sheldon is not. But there you go. Their money went to that. And as did the money of Stephen E. Brody. I'm not sure who he is, but I bet he wouldn't like me and I wouldn't get along with him. Betty Wold Johnson Foundation. The Charles and Marissa Cascarilla. Not a family foundation per se, but that family. I don't know them. I didn't look them up. You look them up. Edward and Shari Glazer. Harold Ham, inventor of ham, which is, fun meat and everyone likes it, but not anymore. Benjamin Leon Jr., the Lutnick family, which I guess means Howard Lutnick, which how come all the rest of the cabinet didn't give money? I don't know. I think they should be fired or probably arrested. The Laura and Isaac Perlmutter Foundation, Stephen A. Schwartzman, Konstantin Sokolov, which is the kind of name that I don't know who it is. He's a finance guy. He's a bazillionaire. But it's the kind of name that makes you say, what? Who's paying for this thing? He may be thoroughly American. I don't know. Or he could be totally foreign. You'd have to tell me about that one. Kelly Loeffler and Jeff Sprecher. I know Kelly Loeffler, and I guess I now know who Jeff Sprecher is because they're as a couple. Paolo Tiramani, another dude I don't know. And then at the end, listed separately because they're their own people, Cameron and Tyler Winklevoss, Twinkle Toes. You know those guys. Interestingly, so 3 of the people on the list are sort of Facebook. 1 who actually is Facebook, and 2 who had Facebook stolen from them, according to the movie about the other nerds stealing Facebook. So there you go. Now they're big crypto guys and something. So Trump has boasted about his ballroom being funded entirely by private donors and his own money. But see, he's not on the list. Not public dollars, but the White House hasn't shared how much money of each of these companies and people have pledged to give him or what they're expecting in return. But I bet they weren't expecting the demolition of the East Wing, but that is what they got. And of course, as we mentioned yesterday, with now 300, maybe 350 billion, million, trillion, whatever it is, dollars, taken off the market, so to speak, as taxable income and sheltered as a charitable donation, that's $100 million out of the Treasury right there. Yes, they were going to donate that money to something else and take that money off the table. It's not, I guess, in that sense, really a loss to the Treasury, but it is a loss to a tax-deductible cause that actually would help somebody possibly do something. Could be, I don't know, well, what sorts of feeding hungry people, maybe providing health care to the ill, any of the Christian things you usually hear about on a Sunday. Those things could have happened, for instance. But instead, gilded ballroom, which I'm sure Jesus would have been thrilled about, in his own right. The guy likes his luxury.
Hi, I'm Scott Anderson, the guy that writes the daily summary for this show, Kagro in the Morning. Thank you to everyone that supports this show. Many of you send donations through PayPal, Patreon, Square Cash, Radio Public, and so on. Some of you write your own essays and send them in, or read articles with your own commentary. We appreciate it. Now, some of you are listening to this and thinking, I'd like to help, but isn't there something I could do that wouldn't require money or effort? Why, yes, there is. You can just like us. On Daily Kos, they call it the recommend button. YouTube has a thumbs up. There are hearts and likes and love buttons. Tap our love button. Tap our love button every day. Share our shows and summaries on Facebook and Twitter, YouTube and iTunes, Stitcher and Amazon. Most of these places allow you to write a review, so a sentence or 2 would be great. Recommend us to social media, or tell your friends to listen to the show. You aren't just helping us, you're helping them find their new favorite thing to listen to. You could change the world. So thank you in advance from me and everybody else in the world.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. So over the break, this just in, Jesus probably would not like a giant gilded ballroom. I was mistaken about that, as it turns out. Also in every religion in the world probably will be talking to people about charity and taking care of the poor and basically being a better person. And yet this thing is going on regardless. But they only regard one of those religions as real, so that's the one we were talking about. Anyway, let's see, other things that we should add to the mix. I guess this is a little bit more in the HuffPost article, but I think you get the idea at this point. Some donors were reportedly apparently given the option of having their names permanently etched in the White House ballroom's brick or stone. They probably thought that was a great idea at the time, and I don't know whether anybody signed up for it, or anybody who signed up for it is now asking not to have it happen, but that's entirely possible. And let's see, the only individual donation that's been made public is tied to Google's parent company, Alphabet, which is contributing $22 million to Trump's ballroom. That money is coming from a recent legal settlement the company reached with Trump after he was banned from YouTube, owned by Alphabet, after he incited the January 6th insurrection. So he sued them for that. They decided to settle because they need his regulatory help on things, and he demanded in tribute $22 million towards destroying the East Wing, and they said, yes, please. Let's do it. HuffPost reached out to all the companies on the list and as many of the individuals as we were able to track down with the same two questions. How much are you donating to Trump's ballroom and the destruction of the East Wing, of course? And if they have any comment about Trump destroying the East Wing and American history in the process to make way for his project. Most didn't respond immediately, but a few did. I can confirm that Microsoft contributed to the ballroom, as has been publicly reported. Company spokesperson Caitlin Haskins said in an email, that is all I have at the moment, but if anything changes, I will circle back. I don't believe anybody who says circle back. Probably. I don't know. That's some corporate speak and usually a signal to me that they don't intend to do that. T-Mobile confirmed it gave money to the Trust for the National Mall, the nonprofit overseeing the donations to Trump's ballroom, even though it's not on the National Mall. Beyond that, a spokesperson said the company didn't have any say on how those dollars were spent, and that's them trying to duck responsibility for destroying the East Wing. But no, the dog flea rule applies here. Ahead of America's 250th anniversary, T-Mobile donated to the Trust for the National Mall, which partners with the National Park Service to restore and enrich the historic landmarks that define our nation's capital, such as the White House ballroom, which doesn't exist and doesn't restore our historic landmarks. It, in fact, requires the destruction of a historic landmark and historic landmark. But that's what T-Mobile's spokesperson had to say in their emailed statement. T-Mobile has no role in the use of those funds or decisions related to the construction of the ballroom, they said. They did not share how much money T-Mobile donated. Hardly actually matters. The fact is, you did it. You bombed the White House. A Betty Wold Johnson Foundation employee returned a phone call to HuffPost and said she did not know what the Betty Wold Johnson Foundation was. No, said she was not authorized to discuss the donation. But thanks for calling. The woman, whose name we didn't catch, seemed like she wished maybe she hadn't called us back. I have a lot of activity happening today and a lot of phone calls to return. She said, I wasn't really aware of the nature of this call. I don't know. I'm sure something's going on over there at the foundation. If it didn't have that much money, if it wasn't doing a lot of things, it wouldn't, be in a position to give away or to have that much money down hand to give away. But I don't know how busy she is. Honestly, all those phone calls are about you paying to destroy the East Wing. I know that. Asked the foundation's president, former U.S. Ambassador Woody Johnson. Oh, right. The guy from the Jets guy. No wonder. All right. Was aware that the East Wing of the White House had been completely demolished Thursday to make way for Trump's ballroom. The woman said he doesn't, quote, generally discuss his philanthropy. By the way, demolishing the East Wing is not philanthropy. Johnson, whom Trump tapped to be his ambassador to the United Kingdom in his first term, is also the owner of the New York Jets. I don't know how familiar he is with the nature of the details of the construction, she said before we hung up. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said Thursday that Trump is committed to being transparent about donations to his ballroom. She courted new donors, too, because they definitely need more money to steal. And then, of course, by the way, in the process of discussing this thing, she said, and was quoted and captured on video saying that the ballroom is President Trump's top priority right now. Although, again, I don't know, do we care about this? To be fair, although it is the second time in as many days that I have played a highly touted, widely shared Aaron Rupar clip to find that there was, I think, context which helped explain a little better what was going on. And even, I don't want to give that benefit of the doubt to Caroline Leavitt. She's the White House spokesperson. She should not have said that the ballroom was Trump's top priority. But she was actually asked the question, does President Trump have any other White House construction plans in mind? It's a good question. Are you planning to tear down the West Wing and build it, build something else, build a bigger West Wing with more gold? I don't know. Yes, maybe no. Although he's put a lot of money into decorating decorating the Oval Office, so maybe he doesn't care about that money. I don't know. But the question was, does he have any other construction projects in mind? Or the arc that he's talking about and showing around? I don't think we've discussed that. He's got a model for, Arc de Trump, essentially, that he wants to put somewhere in Washington, D.C. as a tribute to himself, which is amazing. He was actually asked, who's this for? Me, which, honest to God, he actually did answer that way. But she was asked whether he had any more construction projects, and she said, I don't know. As far as I know, no, the ballroom is his top priority. And I think she probably immediately said to herself, as far as construction goes, which is bad enough, but I don't, On the other hand, do I give her the benefit of the doubt? On that, yes, but I also think she should be, launched off the planet, regardless, even before she said that. Anyway, perhaps there will be more people who want to generously contribute to this project, Levitt said during her daily press briefing. Outside the building, a single protester was loudly chanting about Trump breaking laws by razing part of the White House, which is almost certainly true. This demolition is illegal, shouted Suzanne Jordan, a Virginia resident holding a cardboard sign that read Geneva. This demolition is a federal crime. She told HuffPost that she was a student at George Washington University on September 11th and had to evacuate the school when the Pentagon was hit by a plane. The images of part of the Pentagon being in rubble after the attack, with rescue workers spraying hoses on the wreckage, stayed with her, she said, and now she's seeing similar images with Trump's destruction of the White House. True, they are spraying hoses all over that, presumably to try to keep the dust and probably asbestos under control. The look, feel, the hose on a pile, I would feel that as well, like triggering in the most extreme, said Jordan. I was thinking of the New Testament today, like Jesus has said, forgive them, Father, they know not what they do. Although these guys do know what they do. And they should have known when they were paying the money to do it. So there you go. All right, so I think that's it for that subject. It's probably gotten worse since we've been on the air, but what can I tell you? We'll catch up with that later on. CNN, I mentioned to you, had maybe an explanation for why we're in a trade war with Canada again. This time, well, what I took from them is David Goldman's piece, What the Ronald Reagan Ad That Got Trump So Angry Was Really All About. All I caught in passing was Canada had aired something, an ad of some kind, an anti-tariff message, basically trying to remind America that the once revered Ronald Reagan himself said that tariffs were a bad idea, but now we have Trump, so tariffs are a good idea, and Ronald Reagan is a rhino. So that's what's happening in the background. Let's see what David Goldman offers by way of explanation and maybe clarifying exactly what it was that Ronald Reagan had said and why. We'll see. President Donald Trump has canceled trade negotiations with Canada. There's a CNN article just on that, over what he called a fake ad that featured parts of an anti-tariff speech delivered by conservative hero and former President Ronald Reagan. The Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation and Institute also said the ad misrepresented the former president's words. Aha! It wasn't fake, it was edited. But Reagan really did spend a 5-minute speech, an April 25th, 1987 national radio address that the Reagan Library has published on YouTube, if you want to watch it, railing against tariffs. It was a full-throated expression of support for free and fair trade. The ad, purchased by the government of Ontario and broadcast on major U.S. television networks, aired clips of the address delivered from Camp David, where Reagan was soon to meet the Prime Minister of Japan at the time, when American attitudes toward Japan were hardening. In the recent past, Japanese companies like Toyota and Sony had flooded America's market with high-quality but inexpensive cars and electronics, harming the business of great American brands, including General Motors and RCA. It feels like a million years ago. Shortly before delivering the radio address, Reagan had placed higher tariffs on various Japanese products in retaliation for the influx of cheap Japanese semiconductors to America. He had some harsh words for Japan, not included in the ad, criticizing it in terms that resembled Trump's frequent trade missives. So they're probably like, hey, Reagan's on our side. We had clear evidence that Japanese companies were engaging in unfair trade practices that violated an agreement between Japan and the United States, Reagan said. Do I even have a Reagan voice? Well, probably not. We expect our trading partners to live up to their agreements. No, they don't expect us to anymore, though. Reagan said he would remove the tariff only when there was evidence Japan was treating American businesses and workers fairly, also seemingly channeling one of Trump's go-to lines. But Reagan was clear, I think. I mean, they're saying Reagan was clear. He was loath to place trade barriers on Japan and believed high tariffs were damaging to American workers and the economy. He noted that economists widely believe that high tariffs of the Smoot-Hawley era had exacerbated the Great Depression, which he and others of his generation lived through. A painful memory, he said, remained deep and searing. Yes, that's true. Although now the Republican mainstream line is that the idea that tariffs exacerbated the Great Depression is in fact a lie, and that it was just plain being Democrats and existing that caused the Great Depression. Anyway, that one's not as scientific as the economic explanation, but it's there. The bulk of Reagan's address and the part of that the ad drew from most heavily was his description of why advanced economies had largely abandoned tariffs as an economic tool by the time he became president. They increased domestic companies' reliance on government intervention. They reduce competition, they kick off trade wars that lead to more tariffs, they raise prices, and they ultimately lead to job losses. Reagan then criticizes the Democratic-controlled Congress for proposing legislation that could place more trade barriers on other countries, and despite certain select cases like the Japanese semiconductors, Reagan said his administration had embraced free trade. It's not clear why Trump called the ad fake. I mean, yes, it is. He's demented, and that's the only word that he could pull out of his brain. He might have wanted to go with something more nuanced and correct, but didn't know any words, or he might not have cared at all. And I'm sure it was a little bit of both. But his Truth Social post included a critical message about the ad posted online by the Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation and Institute. It said the ad campaign used, quote, selective audio and video. It was a 5-minute speech. They weren't going to air the whole thing, of President Ronald Reagan, and, quote, misrepresents the presidential radio address. The foundation didn't say what it believed to be misrepresented, though. In a separate Truth Social post on Monday, Trump incorrectly stated that Reagan supported tariffs. They fraudulently took a big buy ad, saying that's what it says, saying that Ronald Reagan did not like tariffs, when actually he loved tariffs for our country and its national security, in all caps. Trump posted, "Thank you to the Ronald Reagan Foundation for exposing this fraud." The Ronald Reagan Foundation and Institute also claimed the government of Ontario didn't seek permission to use or edit Reagan's speech, although it is not clear that it was legally required to. The foundation said it was reviewing its legal options and encouraged people to watch the unedited speech. Well, all we have to do is conquer Canada in order to have the right to sue them for this. The ad has run many times during high-profile events, including during the American League Championship Series that featured the Toronto Blue Jays. Starting Friday night, the Ontario-based team will play in the World Series, a great source of national pride for Canadians. It is thought. I guess so. I don't know. Anyway, Ontario Premier Doug Ford, I don't think necessarily a great source of pride for Canadians, but we'll see. In a speech on October 14th, said his government had placed the ad on virtually every major U.S. network because he wanted to take Ronald Reagan's words and let's blast it to the American people. That ad, it's not a nasty ad, Ford said. It's very factual, and coming from a person like Ronald Reagan, every Republican is going to identify that voice. He was just the best president America has ever seen, in my opinion, Ford, a conservative politician, said. And there go all the points for Doug Ford. Okay, so thought that was interesting. It does remind me that I did see somebody the other day, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to come up with who, but a very fun summation of charts I've seen several times, but this was a parody of those charts, but cut right to it, that basically you could explain almost everything in American politics with one of these charts of the x-axis. There it is. Where's this from? Do I have this? Cerberus XT. I don't know who that is. I don't know what it is. It is he is describes himself as a French miniature painter. Is he French? Are the miniatures French? Both? don't know, but he had a very good thing. I don't know whether he originated it or not, but it was every graph about the U.S. And it looks to me like it is probably a meme that happens with and is reused and reapplied to all sorts of things. But this time the application was every graph about the U.S., and the big issue on the x-axis is the Ronald Reagan presidency beginning, and it's drawn a line here. And the chart is in green, a line graph of a good thing, and in red, a bad thing. And what basically happens is lots more good thing than bad thing is happening. Then you hit Ronald Reagan, and then whoops, they switch positions. More bad things than good things happening. And almost always the case when you see anything of value plotted against the Ronald Reagan presidency. All right, let's see. Other things that I wanted to bring to your attention include, some international news. Let's do a little bit of that, because why not? Greg would almost certainly need to touch on some of these things. Certainly, and if we don't, Justice Putnam will later on. J.D. Vance is alive and said a thing the other day, and apparently it made the news. Vance calls Israel's parliament's vote on West Bank annexation an insult, which I'm sure he thought it was, but I mean, also they're voting on annexing the West Bank. That's the news. But J.D. Vance wants you to know that he takes it personally, which, all right, fine, who cares? That's really not the issue. Renata Brito and Matthew Lee are the reporters for the AP who covered this story, and just so we know what's going on here, Vance on Thursday criticized a symbolic vote, as it happens, in Israel's parliament the previous day about annexing the occupied West Bank, saying that it amounted to an insult and went against the Trump administration policies. But basically, yeah, he sort of felt like, I guess he thinks it's actually Trump administration policy not to talk about, if not actually not do, an annexation of the West Bank in the interest of, the big peace deal, which has already fallen apart, and Trump believes even without it, he deserved the Nobel Prize. And so he's going to be mad if there's like more war stuff happening. But the fact that they did it while he was there was a personal insult to him and to the Trump administration, because it was very dangerous and warlike. So, anyway, you ought to know that actually happened. Hardliners in the Israeli parliament had narrowly passed a preliminary vote in support of annexing parts of the West Bank, an apparent attempt to embarrass Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu while Vance was still in the country. Embarrassment? Okay. I mean, talk about it now. I don't really understand what's happening here. The bill, which required only a simple majority of lawmakers present in the House on Wednesday, passed with a 25-24 vote. That is pretty bare. But it was unlikely to pass multiple rounds of voting to become law or win a majority in the 120-seat parliament. Netanyahu, who is opposed to it, also has tools to delay or defeat it. Is he really? Before departing Israel, Vance also, which, by the way, J.D. Vance was in Israel, everybody. So talk about, when they say the vice presidency isn't worth a bucket of warm spit, he was in Israel in the middle of all this nonsense. And then we only found out because he went to the newspapers to say, I want you to print in the newspapers that I'm mad. Anyway, before departing Israel, Vance also unveiled new details about the U.S. plans for Gaza, saying he expected reconstruction to begin soon in some, quote, Hamas-free areas of the territory. But he warned that rebuilding the territory after a devastating war, which began on October 7th, 2023, could take years. I'm sure it could, but it's already pre-demolished, unlike the East Wing here. So anyway, yeah, but they got to get all that rubble out of the way in order to build their high-rise casinos and apartments that no Palestinians will be allowed in. I think we already know that story. And at this point, we can jump back out of it. However, for the record, we wanted to have that so that we could add that to the roundup. But for some reason, the advertorial about a magic gadget that magically removes scratches from this lady's new car, this AI-looking lady, is taking over the screen. And now I can't get back to the AP story. How odd is that? All right. Well, I guess I better instant paper, or whatever the hell we call this thing, this page, or else we'll never get it back. Although my mouse pad doesn't seem to be wanting to do it. All right, now I'm going to close that window because it's annoying and ads are ruining everything. Okay, other stories to bring to your attention. Golly, there's a lot. I mentioned, did I mention? I don't know, maybe not. If I didn't, we'll get to it. I saw this go by this morning on social media. I've grabbed an article about it, although it comes from not a traditional frontline news source, but rather the Aviationist, which will have an interest in a slightly different angle on these things. But U.S. Air Force releases photos of F-35Bs escorting B-52s. That is exciting news. Where are they escorting them? Well, that's the news the rest of us are interested in. Off Venezuela. So apparently reports of both B-52s and B-1 bombers flying missions that are supposed to be scary to Venezuela because they're flying, I mean, generally speaking, B-52s, B-1s probably not carrying payloads destined for the small outboard motor watercraft that we've been murdering people in all over the Caribbean and now in the Pacific Ocean as well. And with Trump threatening strikes on land in Venezuela, I guess that's what's supposed to be threatened here. But as it turns out, they turned back because it was just a training mission or else it was a taco. I'm not sure which one it is, and we'll find out later. U.S. Marine Corps F-35Bs armed with live, did they say AIM-9X or AIM? I don't know. AIM-9X air-to-air missiles. Of course, air-to-air isn't going to do much for on the ground, but they escorted the B-52s during a bomber attack demonstration mission earlier this week. And, I think we're all aware of what bombers can do, so why demonstrate? U.S. Air Force's Southern has just released a new set of photographs showing U.S. Marine Corps F-35B Lightning II jets escorting a pair of B-52H Stratofortress bombers, everyone loves the terminology, during a long-range mission off the coast of Venezuela on October 15th, 2025. This is what airplane nerds are interested in about these things. So just so you know that there are such people. By the way, according to publicly available flight tracking data, 3 B-52s from Barksdale Air Force Base, Louisiana, flying as, are you ready for this? Bunny 1, Bunny 2, and Bunny 3. They are, by the way, 01, 02, 03. Operated for hours within the Maiquetía Flight Information Region off Venezuela's northern coastline before returning north. So we got a little Spanish practice in there as well. And the 3 bunnies, I'm sure, had a great flight. It is interesting to see airplane nerds covering this rather than, the general consumption news, which is a little more alarming, I think. The images confirm that at least 2 bombers were escorted by Marine F-35Bs operating from the former Roosevelt Roads Naval Station in Ceiba, is that how you pronounce it? Ceiba, Ceiba, Puerto Rico, where 5th-generation aircraft have been forward deployed, wink, wink, since September 13th, 2025. Interestingly, this is where it's going to get interesting. The F-35B as depicted in the photographs were flying with AIM-9X missiles on the external underwing pylons. That is interesting, isn't it? Reports from local observers suggest that at least one Venezuelan Air Force F-16 took off from El Libertador Air Force Base west of Caracas, while the B-52s were orbiting offshore. However, there is no confirmation of any attempted interception. But they wanted us to remember, we do have an Air Force, so we're obligated to come up and greet you, I guess. Another interesting detail visible in the newly released photos is that the F-35Bs escorting the bombers were not carrying any visible radar cross-section enhancers or Lundberg lenses. Normally fitted during peacetime missions, these radar reflectors are used to make the LO, low observable aircraft, not stealth, but LO aircraft, or maybe same thing, I don't know. You tell me. These are used to make the LO aircraft consciously visible to radars. So if you're flying around during peacetime and you don't want people to think that you're trying to sneak up on them with stealth aircraft, you attach these things so that, you're like, here we are. But they didn't, so they wanted to be sneaky. They are installed on the aircraft on the ground and used whenever the aircraft don't need to evade the radars. During ferry flights, when the aircraft use also. The transponder in a cooperative way with the ATC, air traffic control agencies, during training or operative missions that do not require stealthiness, or more importantly, when the aircraft operate close to the enemy whose ground or flying radars, intelligence gathering sensors. I think that I read that verbatim and it doesn't make a great deal of sense. I feel like there's maybe a word or two missing from there that would have helped. But you get the idea. The presence of externally mounted weapons naturally raises questions about how much the F-35's low observability is affected. In this configuration, the aircraft's radar signature is certainly slightly increased, since the AIM-9X and its launcher create reflective surfaces. However, the degradation is believed to be moderate, especially when compared to carrying larger external stores or multiple pylons. Wow. So, okay, there's a whole different world out there considering the meaning in all of this, but it adds nuance and some context that may or may not have been in the general reporting on this thing. But basically, they're saying they went armed and they went in modified stealth mode. So they clearly were out there to try to scare somebody about this. There's lots more lingo in here, by the way. So for those of you that get excited about such things and being tacti-cool, you can, I recommend the Aviationists coverage. It's actually quite enlightening. I might read it over off the air later on just to become more familiar with weird and stupid jargon. So, anyway, I really do recommend it. For instance, I'll just read this on our way out the door here. Moreover, the latest sortie, also coincides with a larger U.S. buildup across the region, along with Marine F-35Bs, AC-130J Ghost Riders, and MQ-9 Reapers have been operating from Puerto Rico, alongside Navy surface vessels and submarines, including the Iwo Jima Amphibious Readiness Group. Woo, so cool. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Roots Radio. Time to, I think, dive into Instapaper and what I had stored there over the last couple of hours. One thing I want everybody to be aware of that happened that's not especially important or impactful, but yet nonetheless gives important context to our lives and times, is the story I saw reported just beginning the other day, because it is or just was. I don't, and I didn't say anything, and I probably should have mentioned the Diwali or Diwali, as it's sometimes, I guess, I've seen pronounced, or whatever, the holiday over the last couple of days. But that's really what the story is about. That if you do something now as innocuous as say Happy Diwali to everyone, you get flack. And even if you are a bona fide dyed-in-the-wool MAGA extremist, if you say that, the rest of the bona fide dyed-in-the-wool MAGA extremists who are white will say, hey, get that foreign crap out of your mouth. And Raw Story has a important reflection on that. Get out of my country. That's not the Raw Story message. That is a quote from others. MAGA fans rage as Kash Patel celebrates Diwali. I don't know if you guys knew about his being Indian, but also J.D. Vance, who was just insulted in Israel. And what are you doing there anyway? His wife, likely also upset about things like this. Daniel Hampton compiled this story for Raw Story here. MAGA fans expressed astonishment and disgust Monday night as FBI head Kash Patel publicly celebrated Diwali, the Hindu festival of lights, celebrated each autumn by more than 1 billion people, by the way, good point, including Hindus, Sikhs, am I not sophisticated enough to know what I'm looking at here? Jains, Jains, and some Buddhists. Okay, another thing to learn about. I'm sorry to the billion or so people who are like, yeah, duh. What do you think? Anyway, in a post on X, Patel wrote, "Happy Diwali, celebrating the festival of lights around the world as good triumphs over evil," which sounds like something that most MAGA people would say they wanted, but I guess not. Patel is the FBI's first Indian American to hold the position of director of Gujarati Indian descent. His family hails from, Badran village in Gujarat, India, and Patel was born in New York. Just in case you were wondering why it was so stupid for so many people to say things like, go back where you came from, like New York. In posting his celebration of Diwali, Patel found himself under fire from MAGA fans who melted down on social media. Jeremy Carl, who described himself as being, quote, on the front lines in a war against secularism, shared Patel's post and wrote, "Do you see the problem yet?" Ex-user John McGlone, who describes himself as an unapologetic Christian American, replied on X, "This is a Christian nation. Check your foreigner stuff at the gate." Ex-user Johnny Blacksmith, who boasts he was right-wing before it was cool, wrote in response, "Not compatible with American tradition." Marine Corps veteran Jim Eagle, maybe that's his real name, simply replied, "Shut the hell up," with a gif of Lost actor Terry O'Quinn, who played the character John Locke. How do you like them apples? I don't even know what the F that's about. Ben Garrett, pastor at Refuge Church in Ogden, Utah, shot back, "Go back!" to New York. I guess he probably could mean that. Podcaster Joel Webbin wrote, "Go back home and worship your sand demons. Get out of my country." This is rotten stuff, right? Chris Nelson, a Florida Christian, replied, "Who the hell is this? This is America, not India." Ex-user Scott Hambrick wrote back, "Deport." I know these are all nobodies and randos, but I don't know. They probably, what can I tell you? They represent a lot of, well, they don't represent, but they are representative of a lot of very terrible people out there who, it doesn't matter to them at a certain point that you're MAGA. You can never be MAGA enough for them because you're brown. And what can I tell you? It's probably about time that somebody reminded Kash Patel of that anyway, just so he knows, but it's not going to change his behavior. So maybe it was just better left on. I know it was better left unsaid, just on a human level. But anyway, in case you missed that one and wondered whether that was something MAGA people were doing, the answer is yes. MAGA randos do that to brown MAGA people. Okay. In more serious news, I guess we can add this to our international roundup. More on the Venezuela situation from the New York Times, wherein Robert Jimison reports for them that Trump he will not seek authorization for what they're terming in the headline here, cartel strikes. We don't know if they're actually cartel strikes. That's what the Trump administration would like you to believe they are. But whatever they are, he will not be seeking authorization for them, which is, horrible, unconstitutional, and part of the overall death of democracy. The president said he would bypass Congress. Oh, I didn't realize that was an option. Rather than ask for approval for his military campaign against drug traffickers, even as he said he would expand it from sea to land. The ocean drugs having been defeated, I guess. I was going to say, okay, but no, not okay. President Trump said on Thursday that he would bypass Congress, i.e. just ignore Congress. Bypass makes it sound like there's an option, but there isn't. That he would bypass Congress rather than seek its approval to carry out military strikes against drug cartels that traffic narcotics to the United States, even as he vowed to expand the operation from attacks at sea to targets on land. I hate land drugs as well. I don't think we're going to this is Trump. I don't think we're going to necessarily ask for a declaration of war, Mr. Trump told reporters of his campaign of deadly strikes against vessels in the Caribbean Sea near Colombia and Venezuela. He's definitely not going to ask for a declaration of war. Nobody does that anymore. I think we are going to kill people that are bringing drugs into our country, okay? We're going to kill them, They're going to be dead. Well, it's the sort of thing that ordinarily, lands you in trouble with The Hague, let's say. But as cynics on social media pointed out to me, the United States is not a part of, very specifically and purposefully, has not joined in with the International Criminal Court. That, of course, is to say we won't agree ordinarily to the what's the word I'm looking for here? Extradition of American nationals, U.S. nationals, to The Hague for trial before the International Criminal Court, because they would very often want to probably prosecute our presidents over that. This one will be fine. You're going to have it. I'll point out for the record that if somebody else were to ever become president at long last, and that person was a Democrat, and the International Criminal Court said, war crime, we want you for trial, and the United States said, I'm not saying we agree to the extradition. I'm just saying we're not saying anything about the extradition, or maybe just, I didn't say we should extradite the guy. I just tied him up and put him outside for collection. I didn't say you could have him, but you took him, and, I'm just saying you took him. I'll observe that. That would be, a choice that a future administration could make, and there's nothing you could do about it. If you can tear down the East Wing of the White House, you can put out garbage for collection as well. Anyway, there you go. I don't think we're necessarily going to ask for a declaration of war. We're going to kill him. He made the remarks during a news conference, so it's on the record, at the White House to promote the work of agencies that Mr. Trump said were working to arrest, prosecute, and permanently remove people who were part of an elaborate drug cartel operation inside the United States. We're working on it. We're killing them elsewhere, but we're working on it here. They came as the president has talked about expanding the legally questionable military operation he's undertaken over the past several weeks, in which 9 airstrikes at sea on drugs, ocean drugs, have resulted in 37 acknowledged deaths. That I think we all agree on. Just what they were being killed for, not so much. The Senate is expected to vote next week on a bipartisan resolution that would bar the United States from engaging in hostilities inside Venezuela without explicit authorization by Congress. That's why Trump doesn't want to ask them. He will lose. The Constitution gives Congress the authority to declare war, but formal declarations are rare and have not been issued since World War II. Lawmakers have more often passed authorizations for the use of military force to grant the president permission to use force against specific targets. So, while we've outgrown, I guess you could say, the use of the declaration of war, the substitute is meant to be, well, if Congress authorizes the use of military force, then you're okay. But if it won't do that or tells you stop this thing, we definitely don't authorize it, not entirely clear that that does anything. Certainly not with a guy like Donald Trump. The last time a president sought an authorization for use of military force, back in October of 2002. So, it's quite some time ago. When President George W. Bush asked for authorization to use military force against Iraq, Congress approved that measure, and it has been cited for decades as the legal basis for military operations around the world carried out by subsequent administrations of both parties, which should be an object lesson in not granting vaguely worded things or the use of authorization for the use of military force against vague concepts like global terrorism. One, because, that leaves the door open to anything you declare to be part of global terrorism, whatever that means, is now a target, and that's exactly what Trump is doing. Well, I don't have authorization to use it against these drug guys, but if I say they're terrorists, then I get to use it, right? Not really. Everybody who was around knows that they sort of what they meant, meaning sort of Middle East focused terrorism, but it didn't say that. So there you go. Because, I'm sure they said, well, we don't want to limit it to the Middle East because then those guys will move out of the Middle East and launch their attacks from somewhere else and say, legally, you can't come after us. I think we probably could have adapted to that. But anyway, though he repeatedly referred to the military operation targeting drug trafficking as a war, but I'm not going to ask for a declaration of war. He doesn't understand the terminology when he blurts things out. Mr. Trump said he would not seek any formal approval from lawmakers to continue striking boats or expand it to include airstrikes against countries like Venezuela, where he says the cartels originate. The cartels are waging war against America. And just like I promised in the campaign, we're waging war against them. he said, in the White House State Dining Room, flanked by members of his cabinet, including Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, Tulsi Gabbard, happy Diwali, and the Director of National Intelligence and Tulsi Gabbard, and Attorney General Pam Bondi. Happy Dumwali to you. The land is going to be next, he added. This is, again, this is what happens. You elect a fifth grader to the presidency. Mr. Hegseth said the operation was aimed not only at deterrence, but also elimination. Really? Every boat we strike is 25,000 Americans whose lives were saved because of the drugs that were headed in our direction, Mr. Hegseth said incorrectly. Our message to these foreign terrorist organizations is we can't count. But the other message is we will treat you like we have treated Al-Qaeda. We will find you. We will map your networks. We will hunt you down. We will kill you. And we will fly your relatives out of the United States on the taxpayer dime. I don't think they had that last part, but I guess that's the subtext. Mr. Trump said that he may go to the Senate to inform lawmakers as the campaign shifts from maritime operations to land strikes, and told Mr. Hegseth to go to Congress. You tell them about it. So that's sort of internally contradictory. I may go to the Senate. Pete, you go to the Senate. I'm extremely lazy. Although if they offered him the opportunity to drive the golf cart to the Senate, he might do it. But he appeared to be referring to a briefing rather than any formal request for approval. I'm here to tell you, or he's there to tell you that it's happening. Period. The end. He appeared confident that lawmakers would support the action, or at least shy away from criticizing it. What are they going to do? Say, gee, we don't want to stop drugs pouring in? Mr. Trump said, they're killing 300,000 people a year. I mean, the most innumerate idiot ever. And he's president. It's really sad. And, super dangerous. In case you were wondering if it was anything else. All right. Got a couple other things, including this bit. Oh, I haven't seen news, a write-up of it yet. And probably I should search for it and maybe live on the air or maybe during the break. But Kyle Cheney let everyone know yesterday that a funny thing happened in the courts. Ronny Jackson. Ronny Jackson's not likely to win any court cases anytime soon. I know he's not the lawyer in it, but he's so dumb himself that it's very difficult for a lawyer to turn it, things he'd complain about, into legally actionable things. And in fact, it hasn't worked out. Ronny Jackson apparently attempted to sue Gavin Newsom. Remember, Ronny Jackson, stupid, lives is from Texas. Gavin Newsom, smarter, lives in California. What's the lawsuit about? He was suing Gavin Newsom over California's redistricting effort, saying, I don't like it, and so I'd like to sue you about it. And of course, the suit was thrown out because it's stupid. A congressman from Texas will have, of course, no standing whatsoever to sue the governor of California to block California's decision to redistrict. But the harm, I guess he was claiming, was, well, we're redistricting in Texas, but when we do it, it's good and gives Republicans more seats. If you're doing redistricting in California to give Democrats more seats so that it doesn't matter if Texas gives Republicans more seats, that's bad, and I'm going to sue you. How bad is it? It's so bad that even Judge Matthew Kacsmaryk, who magically got assigned the case because, of course, Ronny Jackson had read in the newspapers, if you go to the Northern District of Texas in Amarillo and file your suit, Matthew Kacsmaryk will let us have, as Republicans, whatever we want. And as it turns out, maybe the message here is, no, Donald Trump gets what he wants. Drunk idiot Ronny Jackson gets nothing, because who the F is Ronny Jackson? Who cares? Even Matthew Kacsmaryk could not rescue this drunk ass drug dealer who, he passed out drugs like they were candy when he was White House doctor, could not get his stupid ass lawsuit over the hump. Jackson failed to show he faced a cognizable injury from California's redistricting plan, Kacsmaryk says. So that is pretty funny. all by itself. I haven't seen it written up anywhere, but what else would I tell you about it? I've let you know exactly what was going on. Ronny Jackson, so monumentally stupid and scatterbrained that even Kacsmaryk refused to save him. I'm sure there's an article about it somewhere, and maybe even an opinion piece in which they laugh in Ronny Jackson's face, which would be fun to share, but maybe I'll look for it later. All right, let's see. You know what? This is an interesting story, and it's from the Bulwark, and Greg's not here to read it to you, so I'll do it, because occasionally it's funny to read these once conservative people say things like this. This is Will Sommer, who I forget, where he came from on the spectrum of, once conservative type people. It's a mix over there. What can I tell you? Anyway, others of you say, duh, of course, Will Sommer. Everyone knows him. MAGA media keeps thirsting for left-wing violence. That's an interesting headline and true, even if it means they have to invent it. That's the subheader, and that's the real main issue here. Let's go. Let's see if we can fit this in before the break. MAGA social media users were outraged over the weekend to find their feeds full of further proof of the left's problem with political violence. Liberals had been caught on tape attacking Republicans, like physically, they said. In a video posted last Thursday by conservative ex-user Kevin Tober, I think these are somewhat more people of somewhat more standing than the randos, for instance, rounded up by Raw Story. Not that Raw Story did anything wrong by rounding them up. This was a story about randos. But this one is a story about more prominent Republican and MAGA influencers also being pretty disgusting. But what's happening here? In a video posted last Thursday by conservative ex-user Kevin Tober, I don't know who it is, former staffer, they say, at the conservative blog Newsbusters. I'm still pretty rando, but okay. A man and woman appeared to disrupt a watch party for the Virginia Attorney General debate. About as boring a target for political violence as I can think of, which was being hosted at a bar by the Arlington GOP. You know them, the GOP. They really wanted to watch this? I guess that's a holdover from Greg's commentary. One of the few races they think they have a chance to win in this Virginia contest. So let's go watch that one. In the video, customers and bar staffers are seen scuffling. There's fisticuffs. There's a tussle. There's a kerfuffle that erupts into physical confrontation. They're seen scuffling with the pair as they struggle to make their way into the party. One of those violent strikes to try to get into a party. Anyway, some people fall on the ground and the duo are frog marched out the front door. Okay, so it sounds, bad, right? Don't effing, clean it up a little bit. Don't effing touch me, or don't effing touch me. The woman yells at one point. Ooh, what a potty mouth. I'm very conservative that way. Anyway, as staffers hold the door closed, the ejected pair fume outside and shout at party attendees. This is the left in America today, Tober tweeted, describing the interlopers as violent leftists. The video went viral on the right, with many users claiming it as proof, once again, that it's open season on conservatives in America. Violence against conservatives is legal, and they know it, moaned popular conservative ex-user Political Math. Again, getting a little rando on us. Conservative talk radio host Larry O'Connor. Larry O'Connor? The Larry? I don't know who that is. He took to X to pin the blame on Democrat gubernatorial hopeful Abigail Spanberger. That's who was saying, don't effing touch me. Can you believe it? Abigail Spanberger tried to fight her way into the Arlington GOP's Attorney General watch party. It was not her, although I would be much more excited about voting for her if that was her, but it's not her. He's just saying she's responsible, juxtaposing the video with a story that she told at a June campaign event. June! We're talking friggin' June here. I mean, it just basically just happened. Back in June, you remember, she had a campaign event, and she said that people should let your rage fuel you. Aha! Guilt beyond a shadow of a doubt. Okay, very stupid. But anyway, as it turns out, the man and the woman who disrupted the watch party were not liberals at all. As the Arlington GOP made clear in its own statement, which they for some reason ignored, the duo were in fact former Daily Caller News Foundation reporter Miles Morell and wannabe Republican operative Alicia McMillan. If those names sound a bit familiar, they do not. Daily Caller does, though, of course. It might be because you've seen them printed in this very newsletter. Well, it isn't that. But anyway, the same pair was responsible for the abortive Trump First 100 Days party, about which I know nothing, but listen to this, turned into such a disaster, some who were involved described it as MAGA's own fire festival. Now I want to read about it. As Arlington GOP chair Matthew Hurt told me, and spelled with 2 T's, and I don't mean Matthew, which is also spelled with 2 T's, but this guy's put an extra T on the end of the name Hurt. It's a Hurt. 1 T each for Trinidad and Tobago. As Arlington GOP chair Matthew Hurt told me, Morell had shown up to the debate watch party precisely to confront Hurt. Why? Because Hurt had, among other things, called Morell an archetypal, is that right, goober in an interview with False Flag, I don't even know what that is, about the calamitous First 100 Days party. Why don't you call me a goober in person? Hurt recalled Morell yelling at him at the bar on Thursday, which I'm sure he would have been happy to oblige. You're a goober in person. I don't know. McMillan didn't respond to requests for comment, and Morell declined to speak with me. In a statement to the ARL, like as in Arlington, ARL Now blog, Arlington police said neither side has pressed charges. As I was in the process of reporting this piece, Tober deleted the tweet in which he initially published the video of the confrontation and made his X account private. Inter-faction battles and emotional meltdowns are fairly common in MAGA politics. The fact that a confrontation like this had taken place wasn't that surprising. But what stood out to me was the rush by those on the right to frame it as yet another instance of episodic violence from the left, before any real facts about the episode had been established. Golly gee. The facts aren't going to sway them. But anyway, it's part of a larger pattern. In the weeks since the assassination of Charlie Kirk and amid the Trump administration's attempts to justify investigations of liberal groups and troop deployments in Democratic cities, those on the right have been eager to spotlight trends of liberal violence. And of course, it predates that. Everyone remembers people carving backwards B's into their face and claiming that Barack Obama, B for Barack Obama, supporters had done that to them when they had clearly done it to themselves in the mirror. That's why the B was backwards. Anyway, you get the idea. Trump met with right-wing influencers in the White House earlier this month before tearing down the East Wing to hear their stories of being victimized by quote-unquote Antifa activists. Attorney General Pam Bondi held a press conference with right-wing pundit Benny Johnson after a man was indicted for sending a threatening letter to Johnson's family. Oh dear. In fact, the demand for tales of left-wing violence is outpacing the supply of actual incidents of it, and that's because of the tariffs on them, of course. In Portland, for example, conservative personalities have resorted to stealing American flags from anti-ICE protesters, then blundering back into the protests in an attempt to incite a confrontation. And while Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent claimed the No Kings rallies would be packed with the Democrats' quote hardest core, most unhinged representatives, the right was relatively starved for content that met these expectations. Instead of feasting on apocalyptic scenes of chaos and civil disorder, they were left to nibble on the political tapas plates of minor incidents, like that of a protester in Denver stealing a Trump supporter's glasses. That was the Giants fan that we saw face plant in the street. No incident better exemplifies the right's thirst for left-wing violence or violence by immigrants or really any non-MAGA types than the late September, quote, abduction of Florida teenager Caden Spate, who it's Speight because you've never heard of it either. All right. Nothing better exemplifies it than this, which became a major story somehow in conservative circles for about 24 hours before totally imploding, and it never really even reached our eyes before it became obvious that it was fake. There's lots to read about it. We're not going to fit it all in, but we'll say this much. Spate, a homeschooled 17-year-old from Citrus Springs, Florida, this is going to be good, vanished, allegedly, on September 25th, but not before texting his mother that he was being hunted by 4, quote, Hispanic men in a white van. Well, I'll give you 2 minutes to guess about whether or not he really was being hunted by anyone at all. See if you can figure it out. Hi everybody, it's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time, just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and patreon.com, patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Let me see if I can't. I gotta reload Instapaper to make sure I have all the latest additions in the file here. But I want to read you the rest of this piece from the Bulwark, and I know it goes on at some length, but did you figure it out? Did you have a guess after a 2-minute break about whether or not Florida homeschooled teenager Caden Spate of Citrus Springs, Florida, did in fact get himself accidentally or purposely kidnapped after being hunted by 4, quote, Hispanic men in a white van? The answer, if you haven't gathered from the context, is no. But here's what he said nonetheless. A quote, a text, I guess, to his mom, your mom, as a matter of fact. I need help. Being shot at, 4 Hispanics, armed white van, 1 driver, I'm hit. He didn't have time for punctuation because of how scared he was during all this, nor did he have time to capitalize and properly punctuate I'm. But there you are. Once again, you gather the gist of it. I need help. Being shot at, 4 Hispanics, armed white van, 1 driver, I'm hit. Spate wrote to his mother, according to his arrest affidavit, in case you weren't sure how this all ends. It's his arrest affidavit, not the arrest affidavit he swore out against the alleged 4 Hispanic men chasing him. His arrest. So you see where it's going. When police found Spate's truck, and remember, he's 17. Why does he have a truck? Because he's 17. Okay, sure. When police found Spate's truck, he was gone. There was a bullet hole in the windshield and blood on the driver's seat. Florida and federal law enforcement joined sheriff's deputies in their hunt for Spate. Oh no, he's in trouble. I'm hit. Right? Soon after, the Amber Alert announcing Spate's apparent kidnapping and shooting became the story in the right-wing media online. Spate's name trended on X with thousands of tweets. Part of the fascination with the story was owed to an apparently erroneous report that Spate was wearing a MAGA hat when he was kidnapped. You hear me? Wearing a MAGA hat. Yeah. Well, that raised the idea that the perpetrators were seeking revenge against Trump supporters, or more broadly, or engaged in some kind of copycat killing inspired by Kirk's assassination. Everybody said Charlie Kirk got killed. I'm going to kill 17-year-old homeschooled kids from Citrus Springs, because that's how you copy it, I guess. I don't know. Far-right manosphere personality, never heard of him, Matt Forney, predicted waves of liberal celebrations if Caden Spade is murdered by those Mexicans. Wow. We have to stop allowing these people doing this to us. Are they allowing that? I didn't realize that. Based on our skin color, hilariously enough, right-wing commentator Dennis Michael Lynch said in a video, the skin color being white, of course, complaining that the mainstream media was ignoring Spate's peril because he's white. Reports say he may have been wearing a MAGA hat when this happened, wrote prominent pro-Trump commentator Robbie Starbuck on X. That name I have heard, and he actually, I've heard his name because he's crazy, and he has a rather prominent role, I think, even in advising the Trump administration. There are some footnotes to this story, and I don't know. The footnote might lead to a citation of Robbie Starbuck saying this thing, because they've all deleted their tweets since. But as opposed to an explanation of who Robbie Starbuck is, but that's out there too. And, well, let me move on and maybe we'll double back on this. I would say I'll circle back on it, but that would be a lie. Popular right-wing figures like Benny Johnson, heard of that guy, Eric Daughtry, no, and the End Wokeness account all weighed in as well, though it's not clear exactly what they said because they have since deleted their posts. That is because roughly 24 hours after he disappeared, the idea that Spate was a MAGA victim of Hispanic violence began to unravel. The Marion County Sheriff's Office, which was leading the search for Spate, said he had been seen at a local Walmart shortly before his supposed abduction. Okay, I mean, seen at a Walmart, that's bad. I mean, for you being at a Walmart, but it doesn't say anything. What was he doing at the Walmart shortly before his supposed abduction? Well, that could be relevant. He was buying a tent, camping supplies, and a bicycle, interesting, suggesting that he had in fact staged the shooting and kidnapping, then biked away from the scene. And then would go into hiding, camping out somewhere so that it looked like he was missing. Oh, I see. I get you. A witness then came forward to say he had seen Spate abandon his truck. The abduction story was further undermined when Spate's brother told law enforcement Spate had talked about running away. So he just figured he'd capitalize on it. I mean, it's a plan, running away from home. 17-year-old homeschooler. I don't doubt that would be on your mind. Camping out, I guess, is an alternative in Florida. Anyway, it might work. Although, again, I guess I would say, I don't know how let's say this. I don't know how he acquired the truck. But it sounds like there's not that much to run away from, unless he, worked and maybe he worked and bought the truck himself. I don't know. But I guess if I was thinking of running away from my parents' house at 17 because life was so hard, I'd take the truck, even if I hadn't worked to buy it. But I don't know. Maybe he's just principled. I can't take this from my parents if I'm going to run away and be independent. I don't know. Anyway, so somebody saw him abandon his truck, which, presumably means, did you see 4 Hispanic guys take him from his truck? No, he abandoned his truck. All right, I'll take that as information. Now, Spate was soon discovered by police. He was alone. Authorities said he had shot himself in the leg to make the kidnapping look real. But let me just tell you something. I guess 17-year-old homeschoolers don't take anatomy courses, maybe, or even first aid prep, because yes, he had shot himself in the leg and he probably thought, I'll shoot myself in the leg. That's, a way to get a wound that isn't going to kill me. I don't want to be killed. But I mean, one, you want to be really super careful. What am I saying? You don't want to be, there's no being super careful if you're like, well, it's come to this. I need to shoot myself in the leg in order to make my stupid story work. There's just no way to be super careful doing that. But if you're going to shoot yourself in the leg, one thing you want to not do, don't shoot yourself in like the femoral artery. He didn't. Or else they would have discovered him, in a different condition. But he did shatter his femur, which is next to the femoral artery. That's hence the name. And that's going to be problematic for the rest of your life. And quite honestly, if they don't discover you very quickly, even though you haven't managed somehow to sever or nick your femoral artery by shattering your femur, you're not going to, you might end up with your leg amputated if you're not discovered quickly enough. That's a very, 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 very dangerous version of a very, 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 very stupid thing to do for very, 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 very stupid reasons. But 17. All right. Well, anyway, guess what? They all played this to the hilt anyway and are now running around embarrassed and deleting their tweets. They thought they had the killer story, but as it turns out, it was, in fact, too good to be true. Here, by the way, a great use case for AI instead. If you are in need of a fake story, just AI it. Don't shoot yourself in the femur. You could even AI a bullet wound picture if you want and then text that to your mom. That would have been wise. I mean, compared to actually shooting yourself in the femur. But the guy was going for authenticity. What can you do? You can't fault him for that. The initial details that Caden texted to his family were proven to be false. Actually, all of them were proven to be false. Completely made up, Sheriff Billy Woods said in a video. He just didn't say all of them were made up, top to bottom in the video. But he would if he were given a second chance, I think. As the real facts of Spate's case became clear, and as comparisons to the Balloon Boy, and Jussie Smollett hoaxes began making their rounds, only a handful of conservative personalities were willing to admit they had been fooled. He duped all of us, including his family, complained Bill Clinton accuser and now right-wing commentator Juanita Broaddrick in a post on X. How do you like that? I mean, I don't, but she's alive and doing things. And I guess has a conscience enough to say, oops, that was wrong. He duped us. Spate was arrested last week on charges of relating to firing that gun and staging the kidnapping. And while MAGA pundits tried to make his abduction story about the perils of immigration, his arrest affidavit suggests he was actually very interested in meeting up with Mexican cartels. Is that why? Along with ChatGPT searches for how to drain his own blood in an apparent attempt to make the fake abduction look violent, Spate searched for information about, quote, the main cartel station in Mexico. Station. And the best route to where the Gulf Cartel are. I don't know what that means. I mean, they say he was interested in meeting up with Mexican cartels, but maybe he meant, I don't know, maybe he was going to shoot them. I have no idea. Or maybe he needed to be there, or that's where he wanted to be located, geolocated, so it looked like he had been kidnapped. No idea what he was going for here. By the way, how to drain his own blood. Like if you just need blood to make the abduction look like it was a violent scene, there are ways of getting it out of you that don't involve shooting yourself in the femur. But well, I'd be interested in, did ChatGPT say shoot yourself in the leg? And if so, did they say, and by the way, here are the things you want to miss? Because you could just shoot along the outside of your thigh and graze yourself, or cut yourself for that matter. And, look, there's lots of ways to, imagine going to ChatGPT. How can I drain my own blood? Punch a hole in yourself. Well, didn't really need ChatGPT for that one. Anyway, you won't be surprised to hear that the spate, get it? Spate of tweet deletions. He even puts it with the name spelling and then crossed out. And then spate of tweet deletions by right-wingers was not accompanied by chagrined apologies for misleading followers with wild speculation, let alone promises to do better in the future. To the contrary, even after Spate's story fell apart, The Rift, a conservative media outlet that I've never heard of that hosts far-right pundit Elijah Schaffer, that was also never heard of, claimed the hoax underscores how dangerous the world is for Trump supporters. Because GPT might tell them to shoot themselves. Which honestly, on balance, I'm going to have to think about whether I would have a problem with ChatGPT specifically telling Trump supporters, go on ahead. I mean, I don't mean to, ideate suicide for anybody, but I guess if they all had one leg going forward, they'd be less dangerous, presumably. I don't know. The point is, grow up and get a brain, and then it doesn't matter if ChatGPT tells you to shoot yourself. You'd say, no, I'm not going to do that. even if a computer said so. That's really kind of where I would like to get to. Maybe we work towards that instead. Anyway, there you go. I think that's pretty important. The right wing online, what the hell are we calling it? There's nothing Osphere anyway. It's not blogs. The right wing online apparently took away from that the lesson. Well, okay, none of this was true, but it underscores how dangerous things are because this could have been true. You almost believed it. That's what's really important. Stay vigilant, lock and load, because the hunt is on and we're the prey, the blog wrote. That's what blog was that? The Rift. By the way, your problem started with the locking and loading. Don't lock and load because the hunt is on and you're the prey, but you're also the hunter. Stop shooting yourselves in the legs. Only maybe don't. I don't know. Is it left wing? Am I a left winger encouraging violence if I tell people that if they want to shoot themselves in the legs and they're MAGA, they should go ahead and try it? I mean, I think so, but it's not my doing. I'm not telling you to do it. ChatGPT is telling you to do it because of what you're asking. I'm saying, look, all right, officially, don't believe it. But if you do, you do. And if you do, you're not the prey. So I'm just saying that underscores that the Rift is wrong. That's all I'm saying. Okay, there's more. He goes on at this point, and it's not clear to me whether it's part of the original article or not. You know, it's one of these pages that goes on forever and ever. But we haven't gotten to the footnotes, so it must be part of the article. Political violence is, of course, a very real thing with victims of it on both the left and the right. Vigilance is sadly necessary more and more, but the efforts to claim that it is solely or even primarily the province of the left has led to remarkable contortions on the right, because oftentimes the motivations for those attempting or even carrying out violence don't fit into neat ideological packaging. Take another recent incident. Why don't you? On Monday, of course, more Florida. We haven't left Florida in all of this. Florida Attorney General James Uthmeyer announced charges against Nicholas Ray, a previously anonymous ex-user who allegedly made death threats to right-wing pro-Israel personalities like Laura Loomer and Josh Hammer. Ray's politics aren't exactly clear, aside from the hatred he's expressed for Jews and Israel on his ex account. Making things more complicated, Ray has allegedly blamed Israel for murdering Charlie Kirk, a decidedly right-wing position associated with the likes of Candace Owens. That prompted some griping from right-wing pundits. Alex Jones' protege, Owen Schroyer, who split from InfoWars last month, complained on his new show that Uthmeyer and Loomer were out to silence Israel critics. Do you consider that a direct death threat? Schroyer asked skeptically. Censorship is coming. I don't even know what he's meaning here. In defense of Ray, Schroyer said, these were merely very light, nuanced death threats. Oh, well, in that case, that's actually in the article, and that is in fact the conclusion of the article. These people are super, super, super weird. And the sooner we're rid of them, the better. And if it comes from them shooting themselves in the legs and dying from it, you know, what can I tell you? They died doing what they loved, I guess. Okay, more stories, things I want to add to the mix, some of which are late in breaking. But before I get to those, let me just thumb through some of the other things that I parked to see whether I could fit them in. Oh, yeah, that'll take some engineering to get that one in. But what am I even looking at here? This one I might have to open in order to figure out what this is. But as I'm pondering the one I skipped over and whether or not this is actually kind of interesting. All right, so this is a post from Jay Willis. Jay Willis, I'll look him up here. Oh, very large follower count here. I write about courts, democracy, media, and the raccoon family living in a tree behind my house. A topic near and dear to my heart. Blue Sky's only fantasy football guru, he says. and writing at ballsandstrikes.org, and then, of course, his own writing at jwillis.net. Jay Willis has this. Here's a fun little nugget from Trump's demand that DOJ pay him personally. This time it says $250 million. The figure I had been working with was $230 million, but maybe he upped it. I don't know. Or maybe he was just confusing the two figures that have been in the news so much. But now maybe that's why Trump's raising the ballroom price to $350 million to avoid these kinds of confusion. In his memo, I guess, Trump, remember, filing this not yet as a lawsuit, but rather as a sort of administrative claim. In his memo, he argues that prosecutors, you ready for this one? Why is he entitled to $230 million for them investigating him? Prosecutors should have foreseen that he has immunity from prosecution for official acts. Because, of course, John Roberts and the Supreme Court eventually awarded that to him. But the investigators and prosecutors should have foreseen that later he would defend himself against those investigations and prosecutions by claiming to have total immunity, and that the Supreme Court would agree. It was very difficult to foresee that they would agree because it was super dumb that they would ever do so. But that's what he's saying. They hadn't yet done so, but you should have foreseen that they would. This is a terrible legal argument, which is why it's such a fun little nugget, apparently. Plus, of course, you can blame that all on John Roberts and his court. And as a matter of fact, he went ahead and wrote it up for Balls and Strikes, and maybe we want to add his gathered thoughts about it in the last couple minutes of the show. Any number of things we could add, but let's do this one. Why Trump expects the Justice Department to cut him a $250 million check. What Trump's loyalists in the government understand is that the law is a tool they can manipulate to give their boss what he wants. Jay writes just yesterday, generally, a common law principle known as sovereign immunity prevents the federal government from being sued unless the government chooses to waive that privilege, and that would be ordinarily a problem in moving from administrative claim to actual lawsuit here, not to mention the fact that it's the same person on both sides, and it's not clear that there's a real controversy or anything for which relief can be granted. But in 1946, Congress laid out a few exceptions to this rule by passing the Federal Tort Claims Act, which allowed people allegedly injured by the government to sue in the same manner and to the same extent that they would be able to sue anyone else. But first, the law requires any would-be plaintiff to file an administrative claim with the relevant agency, outlining their legal case and making a formal request for money damages. The idea here is to give the government plenty of time and space to negotiate a settlement before it has to face a jury in federal court. I'm telling you all this right now because Donald Trump's minions at the Justice Department are deciding how to resolve a pair of Federal Tort Claims Act filings from Trump himself, who argues that the Department of Justice egregiously and repeatedly wronged him during the course of its prior investigations into his allegedly criminal conduct. In his filings, Trump says that he was forced to spend tens, not hundreds, but tens of millions of dollars to defend himself, and demands that the Justice Department pay him personally close to $250 million to make things right. Trump's claims stem from several different legal proceedings. The FBI's investigation into his alleged involvement in Russian election interference. The FBI's 2022 raid of Pervalago, of course, the sex dungeon, and the Justice Department's subsequent prosecution of Trump for illegally retaining classified documents. His basic contentions are that investigators violated his right to privacy under Florida law by searching his home without consent, though they had a warrant, and that the Biden administration targeted him with sham prosecutions that lacked any constitutional basis. To support this proposition, Trump's lawyers cite the Supreme Court's 2024 decision in Trump v. United States, arguing that then Attorney General Merrick Garland, quote, should have foreseen in 2023 that the justices would decide that presidents enjoy immunity from prosecution for official acts. Although they did do that, though they also said sometimes things that are unofficial acts they would face liability for, and the proceedings were to establish that some of these things were in fact not official. But you should have foreseen that some of them would be, and so something. In total, Trump has asked for around $230 million in compensation. In public, he has said that he plans to donate any settlement money he receives to charity, but according to the New York Times, he fully, quote, expects the Justice Department to cut that check. And as Greg Sargent explains at the New Republic, if and when the Justice Department pays up, it could be months before that information becomes public. Chief among the reasons Trump is so confident in his eventual success is the fact that the Justice Department leadership is composed almost exclusively of people who are MAGA dead-enders, his former personal attorneys, or some combination thereof. The two Justice Department officials with the authority to sign off on a 9-figure settlement are Todd Blanche, Deputy Attorney General, who represented Trump in his illegal hush money trial in New York, and Associate Attorney General Stanley Woodward, who represented a Trump aide implicated in the classified documents case. What this means is that the same people who defended Trump and his allies at their criminal trials will soon have the privilege of determining whether he gets to collect hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars for his troubles. Blanche and Woodward are just two of many people within the Justice Department whose primary qualifications for government service are a track record of zealously defending Trump's interests in court and treating his grievances as theirs to avenge. Pam Bondi, who served on Trump's impeachment defense team and tirelessly pushed his stolen election conspiracy theories after the 2020 election, is now his Attorney General. D. John Sauer, who represented Trump in the presidential immunity case, is his Solicitor General. Emil Bove, who was his second chair to Blanche in Trump's New York case, briefly worked in the Justice Department leadership earlier this year before his extremely powerful former client repaid his loyalty with yet another promotion, this time to a life-tenured seat on the Third Circuit. It will probably not shock you to learn that some beneficiaries of this spoils system are happily waging the same sort of partisan lawfare about which Trump is complaining. Lindsay Halligan, former Trump lawyer who has apparently never bothered to Google off the record, as we learned yesterday, is now a federal prosecutor in Virginia. We should finish that story one day, where she's trying to settle her boss's decade-old grudge against former FBI Director Jim Comey. In March, Trump elevated another member of his legal team, Alina Habba, to acting, yes, federal prosecutor role in New Jersey. I was going to say prosecutorial, but it doesn't go there. Where she promptly launched investigations into several state Democratic officials. Habba's appointment is now tied up in court, but given that this role is her big chance to audition for an even more prestigious gig down the road, she's of course fighting like hell to keep it. For decades, lawyers from Democratic and Republican administrations alike have touted the virtues of an independent Justice Department, a reference to the idea that the people who make enforcement decisions can and should do so without regard to the political agenda of the president who appointed them. To the extent that this was ever descriptively accurate, it's not anymore, because the toadies who occupy these positions of power share a common understanding of what the law is. Not a self-enforcing set of rules, but a tool subject to manipulation by whoever controls it. The result is a status quo in which Trump loyalists in the executive branch are applying case law decided by Trump loyalists in the judicial branch, working together to punish his enemies retroactively and make him some money, or ideally both. Okay, so some well-collected and expressive thoughts there. So I'm glad we took the time to do that. We won't have time, I guess, to finish out the story of Lindsay Halligan's continued humiliation. There was some additional information beyond her not understanding what off the record means or how it works that had to do with her courtroom antics, which I'd like to return to at some point. Let me see if I can squeeze mention of this in here. Jonathan Katz put together a little piece of information that I think might be helpful in understanding the Republican accusations against Jay Jones. We kept saying, oh, well, Jay Jones texted or emailed somebody in which he said he would, the way it was being presented was he said he wanted to shoot a prominent Republican elected official, which sounds terrible and is terrible when you say it. But as it turns out, the actual instance of what the email actually said is of some interest here. And I think Jonathan Katz does us a service in explaining one way to observe this. In fact, he says the only way to observe this is this. As it turns out, the greater context of shooting, I forget even who it was that he was talking about, is the Speaker of the Virginia General Assembly. I mean, you don't want to do that. But he points out here that the context of it was that they basically said it's an old joke setup. Like, and this is what it was. If you were in a room with Hitler and Pol Pot and whatever the F that guy's name is, who was the speaker, and you had a gun and 2 bullets, what do? Right? Hitler, historic monster. Pol Pot, historic monster. And then this guy that they were talking about. 3 people who are terrible, allegedly. 2 bullets, which what do? And the answer is, the old joke is, you shoot the one non-obvious guy twice. Get it? But I'm saying they're worse than Hitler and Pol Pot. It's a dumb old joke, but it is a way old joke. And Jonathan Katz demonstrates how old it is by running a clip from the TV show The Office, making that very same joke, but with a character in the show. Hitler, Pol Pot, and this character from the show shoot character from show twice. Haha, old joke. That was 15 years ago. But what's more important is the joke's been around forever. And in fact, he runs a newspaper clip of Maggie Haberman's father making this joke 150,000 years ago in the newspaper. And, so it's Todd Gilbert was the Virginia Republican lawmaker in this version of the joke. So, I don't know. It's really kind of super crazy, and it seems like good context there. So, I mean, what they're really saying is the guy who might be able to win the race and shut out Republicans from statewide office in Virginia, which is a super important thing to do right now, must drop out of the race at this late date because he repeated an old joke. It would basically be, as I think Katz goes on to say in his video, like saying, well, wait a minute, you told a joke about a chicken crossing the road? That's animal endangerment. We can't stand by that. You have to resign from this race. Well, maybe yes, maybe no. Maybe it was a poor choice. Maybe there was more to it than just that. I don't know. But if that was part of it,
radio.com.
I'm glad I know it now.
You have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
I am glad I know it now, because it's time to go vote and try and get those votes done early while the boy is home from college. Time now for you, though, to stay tuned to listen to Justice Putnam round up the stories from around the country and around the world on the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Next, right here on Netroots Radio. Hey, and Jack Smith is at the top of the news. Let's find out why. Here's your chance. Stay tuned, and we'll see you next week.